What is up, everybody, and welcome. Trying something new. Going to do a little commentary over a match that I've recorded recently. I have a chance to be playing in something called the Malamar Games. Now, if you're not familiar, or you haven't heard about the Malamar Games, this is a unique league where every week is a different format, a different rule set that you have to build around, and you face off against your opponent in doing so. So I have pulled up here on the screen my team from this week against Mancuso. Sorry if I pronounced some names wrong. Doing my best here, folks. But this is the team that I've built, and so kind of before we get into the team, I want to go over the kind of the meta and well, I say meta, but the rule set and what we got going on. So the rule set for this week is what we call no items. Wow, I know. What could that possibly mean? You guessed it. No items are allowed. So none of these Pokemon, as you can tell, have any items being held by them. So that is presented a couple challenges in team building. So some Pokemon like Regigigas or Serena or Talonflame typically like to hold specific items to either boost damage or increase longevity, but not allowed this week. So I just want to kind of go through real quick before we jump into the battle, and I maybe give some of my thoughts about that, what I was thinking for each of these sets. We'll start here with Talonflame. My first thought when I saw this rule set was, you know what, acrobatics priority from Talonflame going to be kind of nutty. I think it very well could have been. It ended up not playing so much of a role, as you'll see, against this team in the specific matchup I was in, but I think it could have been really good in different matchups. Overall, it's just a pretty fairly standard set. Max speed, jolly, attack. It's going to hit hard a couple times, maybe set a tailwind, and that's going to be it. So moving on here to Regigigas. The first half of the Wheezing and Gigas combo. I honestly really thought that this would be a very prevalent thing, but it turns out from seeing the other teams, it wasn't. So when I was building, I was like, man, I'm going to need to at least be speed tying. So I went with Jolly. In hindsight, since it doesn't have a life orb to give it that extra boost like it's used to, Adamant probably would have been the play. But again, fairly standard Regigigas. You're clicking the big button and you're going Regigigas Blast. That's really all there is to it. Giga Impact, high horsepower, Darkest Lariat, which actually came into play. But again, straightforward set. As you'll see, a lot of these sets are, pretty standard because there's not an established meta to build around. You don't really know what the threats are, what the common things to watch out for are. You can kind of get an idea, but for the most part, you don't have a specific calc in mind. The second half of that duo is Wheezing here. It is meant to be fast and bulky. I like the idea of outspeeding a lot of things after a max strike from Regigigas to potentially get a taunt or a Will-O-Wisp onto them. One calc specifically I made sure of was that a Sludge Bomb, since there is no AV to be on the Rillaboom, would do at least half. So it's a 2-hit KO. That's where the special attack investment comes from. But it just hits a breakpoint in the defensive stat with the bold nature so that it can get the extra boost there in the longevity, and then I made it as fast as it could go with a non-boosting nature, just so we could get those Will-O-Wisps off after a speed drop or a speed boost from Talonflame or Landorus potentially. Next, we got Serena. This was the hardest slot to decide for me. It was almost a Rillaboom, but I decided that I liked the Queenly Majesty and the protection from Fake Out and other priority moves like other Rillabooms a lot better. And it did come into play a little bit, but I also really like the coverage that this provided with Triple Axle and Play Rough. And so I hit an Adamant breakpoint in the attack and then just essentially split the rest in bulk, just general bulk, so it could live. It's missing the AV that it's so used to, but that did allow it to run, Protect, so that was good. Moving on here, we're flying through this Urshifu Rapid Strike. Again, really standard set. I decided to go with Adamant and hit a speed stat of 140. Now, you're wondering why 140? Because 139 outspeeds Regieleki in Tailwind all the time. And so I decided to speed creep that a little bit, just because I thought that might be a pretty common speed stat here, especially given that I was thinking Talonflame was going to be a pretty common mon to face. Again, that wasn't really very accurate based on what I've seen, but nonetheless, that's what my thought process was. And I decided since I had Tailwind, I could sacrifice a little bit of the speed and go Adamant Nature just to really make sure we're hitting hard. And then last but certainly not least, he did a lot of carrying for us in this match, is Lando. Lando, we love him, we hate him, everything in between. But again, I hit the 140 speed stat. That's what those EVs are for. And I had to go Jolly Nature to do that, but then I just put the rest in maxed attack and just general bulk after that. As you can see, this is obviously going to be my max target most of the time if I bring it, and so I went with Swords Dance 1. If they lead more passively, I can maybe get off a cheeky little Swords Dance and just boost my damage that way, since there's no Life Orb or Lum to stop Will-O-Wisps from slowing me down. And it also turns into Max Guard, so I still have that option to protect when I go big. And then the rest of the set is very, very standard. Just it's a Lando. What else are you going to do? So with that being said, we're going to jump over to the match, and I will give a little commentary here and there when things happen. But for the most part, I'm just going to let it play and let you guys watch as things unfold. All right, we're going to jump into the team preview here, and I'm going to give you a little bit of my thoughts. So jumping in, I see that this is it's kind of a crazy team. Nothing that I expected to be prevalent except maybe that Rillaboom. But I see it's kind of got a Trick Room component here with the Celesteela, the Bronzong, and the Togekiss to help it get it up. I have no idea what that Altaria is going to do. But aside from that, I'm thinking, okay, it's game one. Let's kind of go into what we're kind of used to and what we built this team for here, which one of the main modes is Talonflame and Landorus. So I can decide that's kind of where I'm going to go with that. And I think the best two mods, obviously, to bring in the back are Urshifu and Serena. So I do that. I'm doing a couple checks here, just making sure I remember everything. I was thinking about Regigigas Weezing at first, but I decided, well, maybe not. Not for this first one. Alright, so as we see our leads about to pop up here, I'll go through just a couple quick thoughts that I see. First, this is very obviously a follow me Trick Room scenario. I see Talonflame is kind of caught out with not a lot to do here. So if I had Taunt, maybe that could have been helpful, but they're getting the Trick Room up. Unless I were to try to go for like Rock Slide flinches, but I see that they're going to be, somewhat passive, so like I said, I'm going to try and get up a Swords Dance. Yes, Landorus and Trick Room is not ideal, but at the same time, these two don't super threaten Landorus with a lot of damage. So I'm thinking, okay, I'll get a Swords Dance up, and we'll just try and chip away at this Togekiss with Acrobatics. Just let's see how much it does. So I was a little disappointed with that damage. Now I'm sure this Togekiss is mostly just straight up bulk and not a lot else to it, because that's what it's there to do. So it made sense. I get the Swords Dance up, they get the Trick Room up. No surprises there. And so here I'm thinking, you know what, I gotta go big here. I'm gonna try and get KO on the Togekiss and maybe get a little chip damage onto the Bronzong in the meantime, because I know a little Iron Defense set could give my team problems because of the fact that everybody is a physical attacker. But in the end, I decided to go for Protect instead. So there you have it. Big Lando. Talonflame goes for the protect. Now I'm wondering, okay, yep, there goes the iron defense. I'm a little worried about that because, I don't have a great way to hit it with the Landorus. But I know that the Urshifu in the back shouldn't have too big of a problem with it with Searching Strikes. It's probably going to be a 2-hit KO at best, even with iron defense because of the critical hits. So get the KO onto the Togekiss there. Set up the Sandstorm. It is unfortunate that it breaks the Gale Wings on Talonflame, but ultimately it's not really that beneficial. That Talonflame's essentially dead weight at this point, especially considering that the Celesteela is what they have in the back. So I once again see, okay, I don't have a lot of good damage into that. So I'm deciding here, okay, what is the best course of action at this point? I think I'm at +2. The Celesteela is probably going to max if I had to guess. But, I'm going to double into it. I see it as a much bigger threat at this point when it comes to damage. And so I said I'm going to try and double into that and get as much onto it and slowly chip away so that I can hopefully clean it up in the end game with an Urshifu or maybe a triple Axle from Serena after it's out of its max. But we do see the Celesteela max right here. And so I'm a little worried because, like I said, I don't have great damage into what is on the field for my opponent right now. And this is where it begins, folks. As you'll see, a very common thread throughout this match is that I get very lucky very often. And that hypnosis, while it is a blind hypnosis given the no items, it is still in my opponent's favor to hit it. So I'm lucky there that I get the avoid. As you can see, they chunk my Talonflame with Steel Spike. And I do a little chip damage with Rockfall as they just continue to boost their defenses. Now, the Flare Blitz does more than I expected, to be honest. But as you see, the Talonflame does hang on there. Part of me wishes it had fainted so that I could have got the free switch in. But at the same time, we're stalling out Trick Room turns, which is a big deal. So here I'm trying to decide, do I go for the max guard in hopes that I avoid hypnosis and, stall another turn or Trick Room? Do I Airstream? Do I Rockfall? I think ultimately I decided to Rockfall there, and I know I won't KO the Celesteela. And once again, I get the miss on the hypnosis. And he finishes off my Talonflame with another Steel Spike, even further boosting their defense. At this point, I'm not going to be doing a whole lot of damage with this Lando, even though I'm at +2. That Bronzong's at +4. The Celesteela is at +2. And as I see there, it reveals that this is a physical Celesteela. A physical Celesteela, which caught me by surprise, to say the least. So I decide here's the time to bring in the Urshifu. We're getting close to the end of Trick Room. And my max is over, so I kind of got to just go for it at this point. I'm not feeling too great about my position right now, to be honest, but I know that Rock Slide, where there's a Rock Slide, there's a way. And so I play to win cons that you have, Protect the Urshifu, again, stalling out Trick Room. I don't have Protect on the Lando, or it would have probably been the more optimal play here, just to get rid of one more turn of Trick Room. But nonetheless, I've already gotten 2 Hypnosis misses, so I decided, let's push my luck a little more, see if I can get any Rock Slide flinches. And as you see, they switch out the Bronzong into the Rillaboom, probably realizing that Urshifu does present somewhat of a threat, even though it's at +4, which it does get rid of all of its defensive boosts. It's kind of a big deal. And they max Airstream into my protected Urshifu, which is what I expected, and so that felt good to call that right. They are boosting their speed here towards the end of Trick Room, so I'm a little worried about that, depending on how fast the Celesteela is, but I do get the Rock Slide off, and once again, the luck goes my way with a crit onto the Rillaboom, doing over 50%. Now it is at +2, but that's a resisted hit on a Rillaboom. So as you see, the Trick Room ends, Celesteela's max is over, and at this moment I realized that that's not a Grassy Surge Rillaboom. And I can't help to think, but that might have been a mistake in the way that it was trained. It's Overgrow, but maybe that was their plan, to go for an Overgrow Rillaboom, but part of me really thinks that I once again got lucky in the fact that Rillaboom might have the wrong ability. So I decide that Urshifu's in too much of danger because I don't really trust myself to get another crit to knock out the Rillaboom, so I decide to switch it out into Serena to take the potential Grassy Glide. And he called it, I guess, because that was a great U-turn. It does switch in something from the back, which we know the only thing left is the Bronzong back there. So it comes in, and I'm launch the Rock Slide with Lando. Takes out the Celesteela, which is honestly a huge threat at this point. So that's great for us, and we know that Rillaboom is going to be coming back in. But the problem is that Bronzong can just set up another Trick Room now. And so I'm still feeling like I'm kind of in a bad spot, to be honest. But I know that Rillaboom threatens my Urshifu, so I must get rid of it. So I launch the Rock Slide, and I decide to triple Axle the Rillaboom. I know if it outspeeds my Serena, I'm in trouble. But I don't have a lot of other options here. And it does outspeed, unfortunately, and knocks out. Almost knocks out, I should say. Sorry. Forgot what happened to this turn. But the triple Axle is able to clean up the Rillaboom. That's a huge survival there on a damage roll. And again, once again, just like that flinch that just happened, showing that without the luck and the RNG in my favor, I would not have a shot at winning this game. So, feels bad sometimes, but ultimately at the end of the day, gotta play to your win cons. And sometimes your win cons are incredible RNG. So now I decide, with just Bronzong left, even if it gets up a Trick Room, I should be in a pretty good spot. So I just decide to go for as much damage as possible. It does get up the Trick Room, but at this point I'm feeling pretty confident that I should be able to clean it up here shortly. And yes, it could knock out my Serena here, but I think I just have too much damage left. Because that Landorus is still at +2. And once again, 3 for 3, Hypnosis misses in this game. And so that wraps up game 1. Coming out of that game, felt very lucky. Did not feel like I played deservingly of the win. Felt like if I didn't get bailed out by RNG, I would not have won that game. And so that's really heavy on my mind going into this next set, where I think, okay, I can't go the same game plan and think that it's going to get me a win again. I have to go in with something new and try to decide, okay, what's going to be the switch up? What am I going to change that will help me adjust? So those are my thoughts going into this next team preview. I feel they're most likely going to approach the game in the same manner, trying to get Trick Room up. My team isn't great in Trick Room, admittedly. So this time around, I do decide to go the Wheezing Regigigas route, just checking the move set here. So I decide to go that route, and once again, I'll have Urshifu and Serena in the back, because if you're not bringing Landorus to max it, it's considerably weaker. It's not the worst, but, nonetheless. Alright, so getting into game 2 here. We now have the Weezing and Gigas on my end of the field. And I'm expecting it to be Bronzong and Togekiss, just like it is. And at this point, I know that they are more than likely going to get Trick Room up, but I do have potential here to go for a couple unique plays. I know with Levitate on the Bronzong, I can't usually touch it with a ground move, but with Weezing canceling that ability, I know I could. So you'll see some debate here on which move I choose. I know that Follow Me is just so very likely. I obviously can't launch a high horsepower into it, or a Max Quake once I Dynamax. But I decide to kind of take a middle of the ground play here when I eventually max and go for Max Strike into the Togekiss and launch a Taunt into the Bronzong just in case they don't follow me, and Max Strike the Togekiss in hopes to knock it out. Given how bulky I saw it was from the first game, I don't think it's going to. This is where Max Hailstorm would have been a lot better for me, but I say there's really not a better option, so that's where we're going to go. So there's the Dynamax. There is the Follow Me, as expected. So this will redirect the Taunt into the Togekiss, but that means that it can't go for Follow Me the next turn, so I could freely target the Bronzong with an attack. So that would be good. And there's the Taunt. Launch into the Togekiss because of the redirection, so I know that Togekiss really can only go for an attacking move, either Dazzling Gleam, or maybe I think it ends up having Air Slash. So I decide I want to try and go ahead and taunt the Bronzong to stop it from getting up any more Iron Defense boosts and going for it that way. And I think, you know what, I'm just going to launch a Max Quake into this slot because, and it switches out into Celesteela because I started clicking buttons too fast and didn't think that one through. And that's what I deserve. So they launched the Air Slash, like I said, into Weezing. It's a 2-hit KO. I get the Taunt off into the Celesteela, which is not really doing a whole lot for me in the end. And they burn a turn of my Max with a great switch in. Once again showing that they have a great control over this match. So I decide, if I lose the Weezing here, I'm probably in trouble. So I'm going to go with Protect, and let's go with I believe I used Max Strike. Yeah, into that Togekiss to try and wipe it off the field. That's at least my thought process here. And they max the Celesteela, just like the last time. So we do see Dazzling Gleam as well as Air Slash. So they launch that in just a tiny bit to the Gigas, and they launch the Max Steel Spike into the Weezing through the Protect as well. Getting the crit, not really sure that mattered very much, but they do get the defense boost as well. And just like we were thinking, the Max Strike will get rid of the Togekiss off the field. Ultimately, though, that does give them a free switch into something else that's in the back that can help abuse that Trick Room, either the Bronzong or I'm assuming the Rillaboom at this point of the game. But they do show the Bronzong again coming out, and my max is over at this point, accomplishing not a lot in the grand scheme of things. So I know that Trick Room's still got a few turns left. This Weezing is kind of a sitting duck at this point. And so I decide I might save it for later in the game. Swap in the Urshifu to take the potential Steel Spike. it would resist it nicely, and then protect the Regigigas just to stall out another turn of Trick Room. So there's a Max Steel Spike like we thought, right into the Urshifu slot, which was the Wheezing. Urshifu takes that quite nicely considering it doesn't have very much bulk investment. But they are still raising their defenses, and it goes for an Iron Defense. So luckily here I have the Surging Strikes, which is great and avoids those defense boosts. But I know I need to stall out Trick Room before I can safely go for them. And having just gone for it, I know on the Regigigas I can't go for Protect again. So I decided to check just to make sure I wasn't mixing the moves up. And Darkest Lariat does also luckily avoid stat changes by my opponent. So yes, I have Slow Start activated, so I'm doing half of what I normally would, but it still is some chip damage through that. And Gigas does survive the Steel Spike again. At this point, I'm not too worried about defense boost because both of the attacks I will be clicking ignore them, but it does really boost up the body presses coming out from that Bronzong quite a bit. Makes it kind of terrifying. So Trick Room ends, their Celesteela's max ends, and now I can feel like, alright, this turn I really need to take care of the Bronzong. If I stop them from getting another Trick Room up, I feel kind of like I'm in a good position, no matter if I lose something here or not. So I decide Surging Strikes, Darkest Lariat, and a Prayer. That's all I got in this situation. So we're going to go for it. Checking just to make sure they don't have a really good switch into both of those in the back. Yeah, they have Rillaboom, but I think their main priority here is getting up another Trick Room. If they do, they're going to be in a really good spot. So we see the Surging Strikes, and that's just not doing a lot of damage. And based on that first Darkest Lariat, I'm thinking that there's a chance we get the KO, but it's going to be really close. And as you can see, whether it's a roll or something else, they do survive. And you see the acrobatics come out from the Celesteela, given that it's a no items. And we know that it's physical already. That makes sense. So they get the Trick Room up again, and I'm feeling like that might be wraps for your boy here. But we're going to play it out and make sure. Just gather what information we can for the next game, even if we can't get the win here. Bring the Wheezing back out. Get the Regigigas going again. And see what we can come up with. So as you see, I decided to launch Will-O-Wisp into the Celesteela. I'm pretty far behind, and so I decided, well, I might as well make a kind of a big read here, and they're going to assume that I'm protecting the Wheezing, but unfortunately they don't fall into that trap, and they do rightfully take care of the Wheezing, essentially shutting down the Regigigas as well in the process. So good for them making the correct play there. I thought if I can get a Will-O-Wisp off, it's going to slow down the Celesteela. Maybe they've prioritized getting rid of the Regigigas instead, and I can maybe stall out another turn of Trick Room, but like I said, they made the right play. And then I just bring in the Serena, because that's all that I have left in the back. And Serena in the face of two Steel types is not really what you want to see. So I decided, let's just see how much Triple Axle does with all these defense boosts, and launch a Darkest Lariat into the Bronzong, see what happens. Again, trying to scout for some information, but they're not really revealing anything new. Just one-shotting my Pokemon. And that will do it for game 2. So it's tied up 1-1 now, and I'm thinking to myself, well, the Regigigas Wheezing lead didn't really work out. I didn't accomplish what I wanted it to accomplish. With that lead, you really want to get a lot of KOs really quick and abuse Regigigas' power. But they were able to, one, get Trick Room up and not allow me to get a bunch of KOs really fast. So I was kind of left wasting my max, essentially. So I'm thinking going into this next one, okay, what are some adjustments that I can bring from game one that I did win, given that it was very RNG dependent? And what are some things I saw in this last game that I think could help bridge the gap? So I start checking speed tiers here for different ideas. I see that, Wheezing does outspeed my Serena, so one plan I had, that's probably not going to work. Triple Axel into the Togekiss and taunt the Bronzong was the original thought, but that plays won't work out based on how I EV'd the team. So I decided maybe Landorus and Wheezing could be the go-to here. And it will cancel out the abilities. And I know Landorus can get a KO onto the Togekiss pretty quickly. And potentially I could taunt the Bronzong following. So that's what I go for here with Urshifu, and there's not really a reason to bring Talonflame aside from decent damage onto the Celesteela, but I feel that I can handle that either way. So going in, I have a couple plays turn one. I'm assuming they're going to bring the same lead again. A couple plays I could go for. There's the just max the Lando, Rockfall the Togekiss, and taunt the Bronzong. But I have to be confident that the Togekiss would faint to that. The other play is get another Swords Dance up, because I know it's going to be a pretty passive turn one. Taunt in hopes that they don't follow me, and if they do, it redirects the follow me, or redirects the taunt into the Togekiss, therefore not allowing it in the pass. So those are the two plays I'm considering here. Ultimately, I decide to Swords Dance and taunt because I feel like that is the appropriate middle ground play. But as you can see, I'm definitely making some debates in my head of, okay, what is the objective best play in this situation? So they do follow me. I do Swords Dance, get the damage boost, and so the taunt will be redirected. They'll get up Trick Room, which, I expected that. Didn't have a great way to stop that, I don't think. I don't think a Max Rockfall consistently KOs the Togekiss, but maybe I'm doubting Landorus a little too much. But I thought this would be a good play either way. So at this point I know they can't follow me, so there is a world where I could Max Quake the Bronzong, but it's not posing a huge threat to me right now. And so I decide to Rockfall a Togekiss to get it out of the way. And so we'll see the Dynamax here for the Lando. And they decide to stay in with the Bronzong here. Last time they did switch out, but it was a different set on my side. So they decided to switch out into the Celesteela last game, but they decided to stay in this game. So we'll see what happens. So we see the Rockfall go off, and it does, at +2, obviously get the KO into the Togekiss. And they bring out the Celesteela at this point. And I'm once again not feeling too great about my position here. I know I can potentially break through the Celesteela, but the Weezing isn't offering me a whole lot at this point. I have no damaging moves into either of these Pokemon, so I decide, well, I need to attack with the Lando. So I could Max Quake the Bronzong, but if that's the case, I need to protect the Weezing. But the other play I could go for is switching out the Weezing to get an Intimidate onto the physical Celesteela and max guarding, which is what I end up going for here. And just barely getting my move off in time. So you see the Intimidate come on to both of these Pokemon. The physical Celesteela at -1 I do feel a little bit better about. Now, if they called that switch correctly and airstreamed into the Serena, I'm still in pretty deep trouble because it's going to most likely still get the KO. But only one way to find out. So you see the max guard, and they launch another Hypnosis, which I think I missed it the last turn. They did miss another Hypnosis once again, adding to my RNG. But they do Steel Spike into the Serena, which takes it pretty well at -1, so that's nice. And I decided to switch the Serena in because I knew that the Urshifu is too valuable to risk taking a hit there and just being at such a low HP going into the post-Trick Room turns that I need it to put in the work for me. So I decided to split my damage just to get some stuff on the board, something to help chip that Bronzong so that hopefully a Surging Strikes can take it out eventually. As they continue to just absolutely boost their defenses to an absurd level. They Iron Defense and Max Steel Spike, just making it so I can do no damage. So we get off the saddest amount of damage from a Power Whip you've ever seen, and launch a +2 Max Rockfall into the Celesteela. Still does okay damage, but the Serena does hang on after Sandstorm Chip to allow us to stall out another turn of Trick Room effectively. Seeing that it is the last turn here now. I'm out of max, and I believe they have one more turn of max on their end, and so Earthquake gets us really nothing here unless I were to switch back in the Weezing, but I decided not to do that. And try to get off another Swords Dance where the RNGesus finally says, no, you know what, not going to happen. And they do connect to Hypnosis and KO my Serena in the process. So I'm feeling like, you know what, I deserve that for sure. I've gotten way more than my fair share of RNG. If I don't get a quick wake up on the Lando, I'm probably pretty much toast. But Trick Room is ending here. I take my turn of sleep this turn. My guaranteed turn of sleep, I should say. This turn, and then I have to decide, do I bring an Urshifu or Weezing? I decided to go for the Urshifu. Let's just see if I can get a wake up and potentially get off a Rock Slide into these Pokemon while launching Surging Strikes into one of them. So So I end up deciding to go into Celesteela because I know that barring a flinch from this rock slide, they're getting up a Trick Room no matter what. So let's see what we can get onto the Celesteela instead, just to put it much weaker. Because once Trick Room goes up, the Celesteela is the offensive threat after all. So Surging Strikes doesn't quite do enough, but it's in a very good flinch, and there we see it again, folks. I hate it, but at the same time, it goes in my favor. I got the double flinch off of the rock slide, which it definitely doesn't seal up the game for us by any stretch of the means. I have thrown much more secure positions, but I decide that does put the Celesteela in range of a rock slide, so it's better to go ahead and attack the Bronze Line, which they end up protecting the Celesteela in front of an Urshifu, which I could have just gotten the KO there, but nothing lost anyway. So I go for the rock slide flinch again because, a win con is a win con, no matter how dirty it makes you feel. And launch that Surging Strikes into the Bronzong, getting it down under 50%. But the Bronzong does get up Trick Room. Does get up the Trick Room and avoids the flinch there again. Rightfully so. I don't deserve that flinch by any means. So I decide let's go into stall out Trick Room mode, protect. It blocks the body press, and they end up going for Heavy Slam as well into the Urshifu, realizing that it is the real threat here with the Surging Strikes chance and the fact that both of these Pokemon have insanely boosted their defenses. But lucky for me, I do get that protect off and essentially waste their turn, so they can't capitalize on the Trick Room. Now they do bring in the Rillaboom, and once again it doesn't have the grassy terrain up to give priority to the Grassy Glide, but I do realize that either way, that's still probably going to outspeed me in Trick Room. So I decide, let's get a little cheeky here. We're going to have to switch out the Urshifu, I feel like, to be comfortable. So I'm debating what should I go for here. Could go for Fly to target the Rillaboom. Hopefully I avoid a Hypnosis. I could go for Rock Slide and try to just get some spread damage on, or I could go for Earthquake and switch into the Wheezing, knowing that would help me hit the Bronzong and most likely get it a KO. So that's what I end up going for. Switch in the Wheezing, turn off Levitate for the Bronzong, making it vulnerable to this Earthquake. But they go for Fake Out into the Wheezing, so that's a good move by me, and they hit another Hypnosis, which, again, fair enough. So I don't get an attack off, but I do take my guaranteed turn of sleep this turn, and can only hope that next turn I can wake up in time. The next turn or the turn after even. So I click Fly into Rillaboom, and decide, do I need to go for Protect? Do I need to go for Will-O-Wisp? Sludge Bomb potentially into the Rillaboom. Thinking real hard, but I do decide to end up just going for the Sludge Bomb. So I know that the Urshifu wins the endgame against the Bronzong. And you can see, even with a resisted hit, that does over 50%. But the Lando does live on 3 HP, and you can see that the Sludge Bomb does a massive chunk. But unfortunately for Landorus, I do take a second turn of sleep, which can't really complain. I got a 1-turn wake up the last time. And so this is probably curtains for Landorus. I know that going in, so I'm like, well, we'll see what happens. I'll launch a Fly. And now the real question is, Do I protect? Do I go for another Sludge Bomb to KO the Rillaboom? Because once the Rillaboom's out of the way, the Urshifu can clean up the Bronzong fairly confidently. But as you can see, I decided to go for the Protect, just to stall out Trick Room. And given the board state, I think that was the right play. Because they do clear up the Landorus, the sleeping Landorus, for me. Excuse me. And the Trick Room does end, where I'm free to bring in the Urshifu, and because there's no grassy terrain, I'm safe from a Grassy Glide crit onto the Urshifu. So I can safely launch Surging Strikes into the Bronzong, Sludge Bomb into the Rillaboom, and barring any protects, that should wrap up the game. And as you can see, no protects, and so we are able to secure the win here in the end. Ultimately, though, my opponent played phenomenally. There's no two ways around it. I got bailed out by RNGesus super hard. I told them that I hate winning with the RNG factor, but sometimes you just have to play to your win cons. It's Pokemon. That's kind of what you do. If you have a Rock Slide, you have a way. And so that wraps up our game commentary. I'm going to cut to a quick post-game thought here, and then we'll wrap up what we got going on.